So again, just to remind everybody, this is the fourth week of a sermon series that I've been doing on the book of Job. I don't know how much you have enjoyed it. For me, I have enjoyed it immensely. It's been one of the most rewarding experiences that I've had. But I know by now that all of you have read the book of Job, several times. Congratulations. It's not an easy book. Matter of fact, it's one of the hardest in the Old Testament to read. For many reasons, one of which is because of its age. It's the oldest book in the Bible. It probably predates Genesis and goes back maybe to 2,500 years before Christ, which would make it almost 5,000 years old. But it deals with a very common problem, human suffering. But before I really launch into it, I just want to read what we're going to be looking at today, which is the 28th chapter. Chapter 28 in the book of Job. We're a little more than halfway through the book entirely. But this is a bit of an interlude, and again, I'll explain more about chapter 28, but I'm just going to read it to you. Surely there is a mine for silver and a place for gold, which they refine. Iron is taken out of the earth, and copper is smelted from the ore. Men put an end to darkness and search out to the farthest bound, the one in gloom and deep darkness. They open shafts in a valley away from where men live. They are forgotten by travelers. They hang afar from men. They swing to and fro. As for the earth, out of it comes bread, but underneath it is turned up as if by fire. Its stones are the place of sapphires, and it has dust of gold. That path no bird of prey knows, and the falcon's eye has not seen it. The proud beasts have not trodden it, the lion has not passed over it. Man put his hand to the flinty rock and overturns mountains by the roots. He cuts out channels in the rocks, and his eye sees every precious thing. He binds up the streams so that they do not trickle, and the thing that is hid he brings forth to life. But where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Man does not know the way to it, and it is not found in the land of the living. The deep says, "It is not in me," and the sea says, "It is not with me." It cannot be gotten for gold, and silver cannot be weighed as its price. It cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir, in precious onyx or sapphire. Gold and glass cannot equal it, nor can it be exchanged for jewels of fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or of crystal. The price of wisdom is above pearls. The topaz of Ethiopia cannot compare with it, nor can it be valued in pure gold. Whence then cometh wisdom? And where is the place of understanding? It is hid from the eyes of all living and concealed from the birds of the air. Death says, "We have heard a rumor of it with our ears." But God understands the way to it, and God knows its place. For he looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he gave to the wind its weight and meted out waters by measure, when he made a decree for the rain and a way for the lightning of the thunder, then he saw it and declared it and established it and searched it out. And he said to humanity, "Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding." And that is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So Nathan, is it me or does it sound loud to you guys? No? Not sound? Okay, good. Okay. So again, chapter 28. Now you remember that in the first several chapters, we set up a scene whereby Job had been targeted by Satan and come under enormous hardship. All that he had and all that he owned and all of his children and everything that he had was lost. He's covered with boils. He's sitting on an ash heap, and things could not have gotten any worse, and Job wishes he was dead. And then 3 associates come from afar and enter into conversation with Job, which transpires from chapters 3 to chapters 27. And there's a dialogue. And they're trying to say to Job, listen, you deserve this. You've done something wrong. And Job continues to insist upon on his own innocence and integrity. And that conversation goes on and back and forth. And we've talked about that in subsequent weeks and learned a great deal about suffering and anger and trust and all the issues that arise when the innocent suffer. And now in chapter 28, the dialogue ceases. And this is the voice really that could be likened in a Greek tragedy or a Shakespearean play to a soliloquy. This is not Job. This is not one of his accusers. That is not the voice of God. This is a reflection on the nature of wisdom, which I'm going to be talking about today. Wisdom. What is wisdom? Where does wisdom come from? What is the difference between being wise and being smart? And if wisdom is something that is worth seeking, how does one find it? Where does one come by it? How do you recognize it? All the different notions of wisdom. And here's a good question that I've been pondering, and I'm going to ask you to ponder, is who, in your estimation, has wisdom? Who has wisdom in your life? A parent? A friend? A sibling? A mentor? A teacher? A pastor? Well, probably not a pastor. What are the sources of wisdom? What qualifies a person as having wisdom? If you were to ask, if I were to ask you, who in your opinion has wisdom, who would you say? And do you have wisdom? Are you a wise person? It's a good question. We're in what's known as a wisdom book. There's a section of the Bible called wisdom literature, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Job. This is wisdom literature. And really the three pieces of wisdom literature prominent in the Bible have a progression. We have the book of Proverbs, and the book of Proverbs really is intended for adolescent people. Young, it's an instruction manual for people, somewhere, around the ages of, let's say, 17 to 25, which is when your wisdom teeth come in. And you're beginning to put the world together and asking serious questions. And, that's when, and Proverbs is a really kind of a straightforward book. If you do this, this is what will happen. There's consequences. And if you behave as you're supposed to behave, things will go well. If, however, you make bonehead decisions, things won't go so well. And Proverbs really is a book of, kind of a quid pro quo. This is the way that works. The righteous prosper and the wicked suffer. And that's Proverbs. And it's good to read. It's good to have Proverbs under your belt. I know that your parents probably made you read Proverbs through and through many times during the ages of 17 to 25. But then, as we get a little bit older, a little bit of experience under your belt, a little bit of time out in the world, you know that, that's the way it's supposed to work, but it really doesn't work that way. Sometimes the righteous suffer, and sometimes the wicked prosper. And, it's not quite as clear-cut as it is in the book of Proverbs, after all. And what's God doing anyway? How many times do we say, wait a second, this is not fair. This is not fair. I can remember, I've been watching a documentary that has to do with the legal system in the United States. And one of the comments by a lawyer said something like, well, the law is one thing, but justice is another. Justice is another. And so we become aware in the book of Ecclesiastes that things aren't always as they seem. They don't go always as they should. And certainly if we have expectations, they are sometimes met and sometimes tragically not met. And it's, there's a lot of gray area out there in life, a lot of gray area. And then, after we go through a series of questioning, which the book of Ecclesiastes invites, then we get to the book of Job, and the universe is turned upside down, where you have the most upright guy that's ever lived, who has everything, all the kids, all the flocks, all the property, all the respect, all the integrity, all the honor due his name. And now he's suffering like no one ever has before. And wait a second, it just screams, this is not fair. Can we trust a God who presides sovereign over all this? This is a very, very serious question. Very serious question. And, if you don't have a philosophical bent, don't go around the book of Job. It just asks a lot more questions than it answers. If you wonder, for example, why you're on the planet, it'd be good to read the book of Job. If you're suffering and wondering why, the book of Job can help. If you're looking for justice, retribution, so forth and so on, and wondering its source and the lack of it on many instances, the book of Job can help. But if these things don't occur to you, the book of Job won't help. It's not a book of answers. It's a book of questions. It's a philosophical book. And so we're going to get to the end of the first speeches where Job's accusers, really they're accusing him of having done something wrong to justify what's happened to him. He's insisting on his integrity. And now we're going to get a break in the action. Again, a soliloquy, kind of an aside. And this is perhaps the viewpoint of the author, perhaps a biblical perspective, but it's going to look at wisdom. And, and the great analogy that it draws, and I love this because I'm a contemplative. I teach meditation because I think meditation can help in life. I think it can reduce anxiety. I think it can, keep a level head. But I love the analogy to the industry of mining. Now, I don't know if you remember, but in 2010, there was a mining accident in Chile. Do you remember this? I mean, it was all over the news. And what had happened was miners in a very remote area of Chile were stuck in a mine shaft, and check this out, they were 2,600 feet below the surface. That is a long way. That's over half a mile below the surface. And what had happened, now, when you look at the crosscut of the mine itself, the way down to the shaft was crisscrossed. It took miles just to get down to where these 33 men were trapped 2,300 feet below the surface. And this happened sometime around the middle of August. So what they did immediately was they drilled a very small, only several inch diameter hole down to provide air. They heard some noises with very sensitive seismic equipment. They were able to detect a tapping, which meant that they knew that humans were alive. And then so they drilled a shaft down to where the men were. And the area where they were was actually quite spacious. It probably wasn't as big as this sanctuary that we're in, but it was big enough so that they weren't scrunched up together. So they drilled a hole down only several inches, and that was the first really contact with the surface world. And then after that, several days later, they drilled down a hole that was not very much bigger than a foot in diameter, and then they could send down capsules of food and supplies and medicine and the things that they needed to sustain life. They still had no idea how to get to them. No idea how to get to them. And so now you have all these engineers and experts and whatever from all over the world that come to bear on this circumstance and the desperate situation of these people. And, I'm watching this, and to me, it's creepy. I mean, mines and mining, that whole industry is just, if there's workers' comp for miners, it's got to be some of the highest premiums on the planet. You talk about a dangerous profession. And as dangerous it is in the contemporary era, imagine what it was like 2,500 years ago. And people wanted gold, copper as much then as they do now. And they were willing to go to great lengths. And the analogy that the author is making is that, to search for wisdom is a little bit like mining. It's a little bit like mining. It's dark. It's dark. It's uncertain. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. And for the most part, it has to be done alone. The search for wisdom. Now, eventually what happened to the miners in Chile is that they drilled a hole that was about 26 inches. You can imagine a bicycle wheel, which is about 26 inches in diameter. And they drilled a hole that was that big, half a mile down. And it was large enough, just large enough for a human being to stand inside of, a capsule, just to stand inside of. And one by one, they hauled them out. And of course, we all watched on the news, when the first human being came out almost a month and a half later. Mining accidents, mining in general. But what a great metaphor. What a great metaphor. And, years ago when I was doing 12-step work with a congregation that I was serving, I would self-identify as the service began, and I'd say, "Morning, everyone. My name's Mac. I'm a sinner." And everyone would say, "Hi, Mac." And because I think that's what all people are, basically sinners. We all are. The playing field is level. And so we begin our 12-step work by just saying, "I'm a sinner. I'm powerless. I can't stop. There's things that I know that I shouldn't do that I do. And so my life is unmanageable." And you wave the white flag. I'm a sinner. Just good to come clean. And to start off that way. But I realized after a while that maybe there was a more helpful way to introduce myself to the congregation. Having been told by a brain specialist that to emphasize a negative attribute in my life was probably not the best way to go. And is there another word that could be used? And I thought, well, I'm a seeker. So I started saying, "Morning, everyone. My name's Mac, and I'm a seeker." And it had more of an impact on me. And I identify as a seeker. And I don't know if you do too. If you're a seeker, if there's something you're looking for, some answers, some knowledge, some wisdom that might help you navigate life, make decisions, discernment process. Should I trust this person? Should I take this job? Should I end this marriage? Should I marry this person? How should I reprimand my child? How can I acknowledge? And so forth. All these. How do you make decisions in life? How do you decide what to do, where to go, who to be with, and so forth? Requiring a wisdom. And so we seek this out. We seek it out. We have mentors, and we turn to different sources of authority and wisdom. But so we're in a process of discernment. And so the 28th chapter begins that way. There's mining, there's all the things that humans do to find things out that are precious. And that's a little bit like what we do when we seek wisdom. We go into dangerous places. And what's the most dangerous place that you can go? The human heart. Human heart. And you begin to, get a glimpse of what's going on. And so And so we know in some respect now that, that wisdom is different than a human activity. It's not necessarily, and I asked earlier if there was a difference in your estimation between being wise and being smart. Because there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that are really smart. They're really smart, but they have no wisdom. They have no wisdom. I mean, they're smart, they have no wisdom. And, you know, I can think of a few, I'm not going to really mention them, but perhaps you can too. People who you know that are really smart but have no wisdom. So where does wisdom come from? What's the difference? And we see then that wisdom has a transcendent, supernatural, otherworldly nature about it. And the thing about wisdom is that it comes from deep within us in a different place that being smart comes from, or even human intelligence comes from. And that's why its depth has to be plumbed. And that's why we meditate. That's why we meditate. We meditate to what? Why do we meditate? To improve our conscious contact with a knowledge that we have access to, but it's not all that easy to come by. And so this discipline of seeking and of going deeper is made clear to us in the book of Job. Now, in the end, you'll see that wisdom is a thing that God is very familiar with. Oh, wisdom. I know all about wisdom. And every human being has it within them. And they just have to have access to it. And the way that the author of Job will put it is that wisdom is the fear of the Lord. Wisdom is the fear of the Lord. Now, when we think of fear, and we think of fear negatively, don't we? Like, you don't want people to be afraid of God. That doesn't make any sense. Why would people be afraid of a God who loves us and created us and grants us, you know, happy, healthy relationships, provides for us with, you know, the fruit of the earth and so forth. Rain, God gives us rain, water the planet, you know. Why should we be afraid of God? And that's not what the author of Job is talking about. Fear, what the Bible is talking about is humility. That we're not God. And that's why the language of the second step is so important. We come to understand that there's a power greater than us. There's a power greater than us that we can turn to, that can restore us, set us back on the path. And so wisdom is the fear of the Lord, just standing in awe of a presence greater than we are that can bring wisdom and discernment into our lives. And this is then the purpose and the practice of meditation. Standing in awe, in fear, to gain an understanding deeper than we're capable of in ourselves. And I'm encouraged by that. And I'm encouraged by that. And what will the voice of wisdom inevitably do? Keep us on the right path. Keep us on the right path. Turning away from the decisions that inevitably will harm us. And so Job is going to take the opportunity, the author of the book is going to take the opportunity to point out the essential ingredient here in living the life that Job wants to live, which is wisdom, which is, I am not God. I am not in control. And the real question, I think, that one of the real questions that the book of Job asks is, can I love something that I have no control over? Can I love something that I have no control over? When we want so much to be in control. So again, there we are in the 28th chapter, considered by many to be the greatest wisdom poem in the Bible, and I would commend it to your meditation practice. Amen.
Contributions to St. Luke's Episcopal Church help to make the digital ministry and other outreach within the community possible. If it is in your heart to make a donation, St. Luke's secure PayPal link, as well as the church's mailing information, may be found in the description of this video. Thank you.